When I walked in, my mother-in-law announced, "My daughter's kids eat first. Her kids can wait for leftovers." My children sat silently in front of empty plates. My sister-in-law smirked. They need to learn their place. I didn't argue. I simply gathered my kids and walked out. They assumed they'd humiliated me. But minutes later, their house erupted in panicked screams they never saw coming. I stood paralyzed, a silent sentinel in the doorway of my in-laws' house, my eyes locked on the heart-wrenching scene. My 9-year-old daughter, Mia, sat utterly still, her gaze fixed on a stark, empty plate. Across the gleaming dining table, her cousin, Harper, reveled in a third generous helping of lasagna. That's when Addison's voice, my mother-in-law's, pierced the air like a honed blade. "My daughter's kids eat first. Her kids can wait for scraps." Addison didn't even glance up, her focus entirely on serving Harper yet another lavish portion. Peyton, my sister-in-law, caught my eye from her seat, a triumphant smirk gracing her lips. She leaned conspiratorially towards Mia and Evan, perched silently on kitchen counter stools, their plates conspicuously barren, and declared, her voice resonating through the room, they should know their place. From his recliner, Roger offered a slow, deliberate nod, a forkful of food suspended midway to his mouth. Asterisk, this was not just a meal. It was a grotesque lesson in hierarchy, a chilling declaration of my children's worthlessness. This is for every parent who's been dismissed, every family who's felt unseen. Now, let's trace the path that led to this breaking point. Asterisk, I uttered not a single word. Instead, I moved, a phantom in my own anger, to my children. I helped them gather their meager belongings, and we exited that house in a shroud of complete silence. They believed I was defeated, that I'd crumbled under their cruelty, resigned to crawl back as I always had. What they couldn't possibly fathom was that in precisely 18 minutes, their carefully constructed world would begin to unravel, and the screams would commence. But to comprehend the seismic shift of that evening, you first need to understand how I became their personal ATM, how I transitioned from Wyatt's fiancée to the family's endless source of funds, how 6 years of unwavering generosity morphed me into someone they felt they could humiliate without consequence. It began subtly 2 months before my wedding. Addison called me at work, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine distress. Property taxes, she explained, had unexpectedly skyrocketed. Could we help just this once? $3,000. She promised repayment within months. I sat in my office at the pharmaceutical company, a senior project manager, staring at the number she dictated. 3,000 wasn't negligible, but it wasn't insurmountable either. I wrote the check that very day. Wyatt was effusively grateful, pulling me into a tight hug, praising my generosity, saying his family was lucky to have me. I didn't confess that my generosity was born of a deeper desperation. My parents had died in a car accident during my junior year of college, leaving me with a modest inheritance and a cavernous loneliness that yearned for connection. Wyatt's family, initially, felt like everything I'd lost. His mother baked pies, his father spun hilarious tales, and his sister's 2 children, Harper and Liam, had called me Aunt Leah within weeks. When Addison hugged me and whispered that I was the daughter she'd always wanted, a tiny, fractured piece inside me began to mend. I believed I'd found my place, my home. I was tragically oblivious that I'd just made my first payment into a system designed to bleed me dry. 3 months post-wedding, Roger required a medical procedure. Insurance covered most, but not all. $5,000 this time. Addison tearfully explained, emphasizing Roger's embarrassment, his pride, how much it meant for family to step up. I signed that check even faster than the first, buoyed by gratitude that made me feel needed in a way I'd never known. That's when the pattern should have screamed at me. When I should have questioned why Peyton, Roger's adult daughter, wasn't contributing. Why his own substantial savings couldn't bridge a $5,000 gap. Why every family crisis inevitably landed squarely on my shoulders. But I didn't ask. I craved acceptance, the role of the good daughter-in-law who understood that family helps family, the one who belonged. My career had surged after graduate school. At 31, a senior project manager was a significant achievement, and my salary reflected it, nearly triple Wyatt's earnings as a high school biology teacher. His family noted this disparity immediately, though never overtly at first. Instead of explicit praise for my professional success, Addison would touch my arm, her eyes warm with what I mistook for affection, remarking how proud she was that Wyatt had married someone so stable, so capable. I didn't realize she was meticulously calculating my worth down to the last dollar. The requests escalated with chilling precision after that first year. Addison would call within days of my promotion, suddenly facing a $15,000 roof emergency. The contractor's estimate would mysteriously land in my office that same afternoon, as if meticulously pre-planned. Roger's truck would invariably die precisely after my year-end bonus hit our account, requiring immediate replacement for his part-time hardware store job. Then came Peyton's crisis, a bitter divorce from an abusive husband, suddenly necessitating a $12,000 custody lawyer to protect Harper and Liam. Addison, sobbing, implored me, emphasizing family loyalty, protecting our own, implying I was heartless if I refused. I wrote that check without even consulting Wyatt, paralyzed by the thought of refusing to protect children. I failed to question why Peyton's own parents, who owned their home outright and possessed significant retirement savings, couldn't cover their daughter's legal fees. Why every family emergency bypassed the most obvious benefactors and fell directly to me. I was too desperate to belong to recognize I was being systematically exploited. 6 long years. 6 years of writing checks for fabricated emergencies, always synchronized with my bonuses and raises. 6 years of funding roof repairs, truck replacements, legal fees, medical bills. 6 years of being lauded as generous, selfless, and every mother's dream daughter-in-law. What I conveniently overlooked during all those years was the stark absence of reciprocity. Our relationship had become a one-way street, where I poured everything in and received nothing but more demands. When Mia was hospitalized with severe pneumonia, and I desperately needed help with Evan, Addison was perpetually too busy with her church women's group. When miscarriage left me shattered and barely able to leave my bed, Peyton couldn't spare time from her part-time boutique job to bring a meal or help with the kids. When Wyatt and I struggled in our marriage, desperately needing a weekend away to reconnect, suddenly everyone had scheduling conflicts and prior commitments, making childcare impossible. But when they needed money, I was family, sacred, obligated, expected to sacrifice without hesitation. Wyatt never questioned it. He was raised in a household where his mother's word was absolute law, where Peyton's status as the biological daughter granted her an untouchable position I could never attain, regardless of how long we were married or how much I contributed. He genuinely equated financial support with love, believing our checks were proof of our commitment to family bonds. I wanted so desperately to be a good wife, to honor his family as he honored them, that I ignored the growing unease in my gut. I ignored how they never once asked about my work stress or celebrated my achievements. I ignored how they showered Peyton with praise for managing her part-time boutique job while casually dismissing my 60-hour work weeks as just corporate work anyone could do. I ignored how their house teemed with dozens of photos of Harper and Liam, yet not a single picture of Mia or Evan. I ignored everything, terrified of being branded the difficult daughter-in-law, the outsider who couldn't understand their ways, the woman who married their son but never quite fit into their world. So I kept writing checks and pretending everything was fine. I endured Sunday dinners, expected to cook and clean while Peyton scrolled her phone. I volunteered to host holidays, Addison's bad back conveniently flaring up, only to watch her later play with Harper and Liam for hours, entirely pain-free. I remained the reliable ATM, the solution to every financial problem, the daughter-in-law who never said no. Until that day, until I walked in and saw my children's empty plates, their cousins feasting. Until I heard Addison decree my children could wait for scraps. Until Peyton told my babies they needed to know their place. That's when 6 years of willful blindness shattered instantly. That's when I finally understood what I had truly been funding all this time. Not family connection, not belonging, but my children's systematic humiliation at the hands of people who valued my money infinitely more than my children's dignity. I gathered Mia and Evan and walked out, wordless, because I didn't trust myself to speak. If I started talking, I would start screaming, and I needed to be cold, calculated for what was coming next. In the car, Evan quietly asked if we were in trouble. Mia stared out the window, tears silently tracking down her face, unwiped. And I made a decision, right there in their driveway. I was done being the good daughter-in-law, done writing checks for people who deemed my children disposable. I pulled out my phone, checked the time, and started the car, driving home in a silence filled with the roar of my own reckoning. My mind raced, already calculating the precise steps, the exact timing, the meticulously planned return of the favor. 18 minutes. That's how long my children had sat with empty plates, watching. In 18 minutes, I was going to make them understand what they had just lost. The morning had unfolded like any other Tuesday. Camp drop-off, 3 back-to-back client presentations on a new drug trial, 17 emails demanding immediate attention. By 4:30 p.m., I was still trapped in a conference room, listening to a lead researcher dissect testing timelines, and a wave of dread washed over me. I wouldn't make it to pick up Mia and Evan by 5. I surreptitiously texted Addison from under the table, feigning note-taking. Asterisk running late with work. Any chance you could grab the kids from camp and keep them until 7? So sorry for the short notice. Asterisk a reply was instant. Asterisk, of course, would love to spend extra time with them. Take all the time you need. Asterisk a red flag should have unfurled then. Addison never volunteered for extra time with my children. There was always an excuse, back pain, a church commitment, feeling under the weather. The eagerness in those 3 sentences should have triggered every alarm in my system, but I was too relieved, too desperate to question it. I sent a grateful thank you, forcing my attention back to the presentation, mentally mapping my escape route. Escape, however, was not swift. The researcher peppered me with questions. The project director raised concerns. By the time I reached my car, it was 6:45 p.m. I texted Addison again. On my way, she responded with a smiley face and dinner's ready whenever you arrive. Dinner. She'd cooked them dinner. That should have been my second warning. I pulled into their driveway at 7:15, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across their meticulously manicured lawn. Before I even cut the engine, I heard children's laughter from inside, but it felt fractured, 2 distinct groups laughing at different things in different rooms. I grabbed my work bag and walked up the path, my hand fishing for the key they'd given me 6 years ago. Addison had presented it with ceremony after the wedding, holding it aloft and declaring I was officially part of the family, that it symbolized my place in their home and hearts. Wyatt had grown misty-eyed. Peyton had hugged me. Roger had raised a toast. I'd wept tears of genuine gratitude then, believing I truly belonged. Now, that key felt heavy, cold, as I slid it into the lock. The front door opened directly into their living room, but the cacophony emanated from deeper within, the kitchen and dining area. I stepped inside, the rich aroma of Italian food, tomato sauce, garlic, fresh bread, instantly hitting me. My stomach rumbled. I'd skipped lunch. A flicker of hope. Perhaps Addison had thought of me, too. Perhaps this was one of those rare moments where she considered my needs. I followed the voices and laughter, my work heels clicking in alien rhythm on their hardwood floors. The hallway opened into a large, combined kitchen and dining space, and that's when I saw it. The scene that would forever replay in my nightmares with perfect, terrible clarity. Peyton's children sat at the formal mahogany dining table like honored guests at a feast. Harper, tin, her napkin tucked properly in her shirt, worked her way through what looked like a 3rd helping of lasagna. Liam, 8, close to Evan's age, chuckled at something his mother had said, reaching for another piece of garlic bread from the basket. Their plates were piled high, real plates, the fine floral china Addison reserved for holidays. Crystal glasses brimming with lemonade sat beside each one. Cloth napkins, not paper. My children sat on bar stools at the kitchen counter 15 feet away. Their plates were completely empty. Not even crumbs. Just white ceramic surfaces that might as well have been mirrors, reflecting back their perceived insignificance. Mia and Evan weren't laughing. They sat perfectly still, hands clasped in their laps, watching their cousins eat, the way one watches a television screen, something distant, something they weren't part of and never would be. The physical segregation was so deliberate, so stark, my brain struggled to process it. This wasn't an accident, not poor planning, not bad timing. This was intentional. Addison stood at the dining table, her back to my children, serving Harper yet another generous portion of lasagna directly from the serving dish. She smiled, chatting animatedly with Peyton, who scrolled her phone with one hand, absently sipping lemonade with the other. Roger occupied his usual recliner in the adjoining living room, his own plate balanced on his lap, watching the evening news. Nobody had noticed me. I stood in the doorway, observing this domestic tableau, a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. "Oh, Leah, perfect timing," Addison chirped when she finally glanced up. No embarrassment, no guilt, just mild pleasure, as if my arrival were a convenient punctuation mark. We just finished dinner. Finished. As if my children had participated in a meal instead of silently observing. I couldn't speak yet. My throat had constricted with a rage, so cold it felt like ice spreading through my chest. Instead, I walked to Mia and Evan, kneeling to their eye level, forcing my voice to sound calm, normal. "Hey, babies, how was your day?" "Good," Mia replied, her voice imbued with that careful, neutral tone she adopted when desperate not to upset anyone, not to cause trouble. At 9, my daughter had already learned to make herself smaller, to minimize her needs and feelings for others' comfort. When had that happened? Why had I allowed that to happen? "Did you guys have fun playing together?" I asked, glancing between my children and their feasting cousins. Evan shook his head, and I thanked God for his unvarnished honesty. He hadn't yet learned to lie to protect others' feelings. "They played different games," he said quietly. I scanned the room again, truly seeing it this time. My children, positioned at the absolute edge, perched like visitors. Peyton's kids, sprawled comfortably across the dining space like owners. The unsettling normalcy of it all to everyone at that table. What did everyone have for dinner? I asked, knowing the answer would gut me. Grammy made lasagna. Harper announced proudly from the dining table. "It's really good. She makes the best lasagna." I looked at Mia. "And what did you two have?" Mia hesitated a quick, telling glance toward Addison. That glance revealed everything about the power dynamics in this house, about who my daughter had learned to defer to. "We weren't that hungry," she finally mumbled. But I knew Mia, always hungry after camp, always asking about dinner the second I picked her up. She never turned down her grandmother's cooking. "Actually, there wasn't quite enough for everyone," Addison interjected smoothly, as if explaining something perfectly reasonable. "So, I made them grilled cheese earlier." They were fine with it. Children don't need full meals every single time they're here. I stood and walked to the kitchen counter where a large glass lasagna pan sat, at least 6 generous servings still remaining. Enough to feed my children twice over. Enough to expose Addison's lie. And she didn't even care that the evidence was right there. "I think I'll make them plates now," I said, reaching for the serving spoon. "Leah, honestly, they're fine," Addison insisted, a sharp edge now in her voice. "Children don't need full meals every single time they're here. They already ate. But Harper and Liam seem to need full meals," I observed quietly, looking at the overflowing plates at the dining table. "They seem to need second and third helpings." The room fell, silent save for the television's distant murmur. Even Roger's chewing slowed, sensing the tension. "My daughter's children have different nutritional needs," Addison declared, and the casual brutality of her statement stole my breath. "Her kids can wait for scraps if there's not enough to go around. That's just how it works in blended families." Blended families. As if the problem was family structure, not deliberate exclusion. As if she were explaining basic mathematics instead of teaching my children they didn't deserve to eat. I began serving lasagna onto 2 clean plates anyway, my hands trembling with barely contained fury. Behind me, Peyton's chair scraped the floor. Her footsteps approached, and then her voice, directed not at me, but at my children. "You two are sweet kids," she said, and when I turned, she was smiling. "But you should know your place in this family. My children come first. That's just how it is." Mia's fork, which she'd picked up in anticipation of finally eating, froze midway to the plate I was preparing. Evan's eyes welled, tears he was too proud to shed. Roger's voice drifted from the living room, agreeable and matter-of-fact. "Best they learn young." I looked at my children's faces as they absorbed this lesson about their worth, about how their own family saw them as lesser beings, undeserving of basic dignity or kindness. Something inside me snapped clean in half. "Come on, kids," I said quietly. "Get your things. We're leaving." "Leah, don't be dramatic," Addison called after me, but I was already helping Mia from her stool. "We could talk about this." I didn't respond. I simply placed the plates of lasagna I'd prepared into the microwave and set it for 2 minutes. My children were going to eat. They were going to eat properly, sitting down, taking their time, not rushed out the door as if I were ashamed of feeding them in this house. "Talk about what?" I finally said, my voice eerily calm even to my own ears. "About how you think my children should accept being second-class family members. About how you think it's appropriate to feed them scraps while their cousins feast." The microwave beeped. I pulled out the plates, tested the temperature with my finger, and set them before Mia and Evan. Their faces transformed at the sight of the food. Real food. The same food their cousins had enjoyed. That simple joy shouldn't have broken my heart, but it did. They shouldn't have been this grateful for basic decency. "You're twisting everything," Roger said from his recliner, finally setting down his own plate. "We love those kids." I looked at him directly for the first time. "Do you? When was the last time you came to one of Evan's baseball games?" Silence. "When was the last time you asked me about her science fair project?" "She won second place in her grade, by the way. Built a model of the solar system that lit up when you pressed buttons for each planet." More silence. "When's the last time either of you treated them like they actually belonged here?" While my children ate, I pulled up another bar stool and sat beside them, watching their faces as they focused on their food with an intensity that made my chest ache. They ate like they feared someone might snatch it away. 7 and 9 years old, and they'd already learned not to take anything for granted in this house. "So what did you guys do all day?" I asked gently, keeping my voice light despite feeling Addison's eyes boring into the back of my head. "Watched TV mostly," Evan said between bites. "Any good shows?" He shrugged. "The ones for little kids." "Did you play any games?" "It's such a beautiful day outside." The question hung in the air, waited, before Mia answered, her eyes still on her plate. "Harper and Liam went to the park with Grammy." "That sounds fun. Did you go too?" Silence. The kind that speaks volumes. "Why didn't you go to the park, baby?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would devastate me. "Grammy said she could only take 2 kids safely." Mia explained with a matter-of-factness that shattered something inside me. "And Harper and Liam asked first, so they gotta go." Asked first. As if my children's grandmother operated on a first-come, first-served basis instead of treating all her grandchildren equally. As if taking 4 kids to a public park was inherently more dangerous than taking 2. "How long were they gone?" I asked. "I don't know. We watched 3 episodes of cartoons. An hour and a half minimum." My children had sat inside, watching toddler cartoons, while their grandmother took their cousins to the park on a perfect summer afternoon. And nobody had seen anything wrong with that picture. I looked over at Addison, suddenly engrossed in wiping down the already clean dining table. "You couldn't take all. For kids to the park." "It's a safety issue, Leah," she said without looking at me. "I can only watch so many children at once." Harper and Liam are more familiar with the park rules. They know how to stay close and listen. I didn't want to risk. Risk what? I cut her off. Risk my children existing in the same space as their cousins? Risk treating them like they matter? That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Peyton, who'd been quiet since I started heating the lasagna, suddenly set down her phone. "Actually, Leah, since you're here, I should mention we're going to be pretty busy the next few weekends." Summers full of activities. The shift in topic was so abrupt, it took me a second to catch up. What kind of activities? Oh, community pool parties, neighborhood barbecues, the annual family reunion on my mom's side. She said it casually, like mere conversation, but I caught the deliberate exclusion in her tone. That sounds wonderful. The kids would love all of that, especially the pool parties. Mia's been practicing her diving all summer. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Well, Peyton said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. These are kind of specific events, not really appropriate for everyone. What does that mean? Roger cleared his throat from the living room. What Peyton means is that some of these events are specifically for blood family. Keeps things simple, you understand? Traditions and all that. Blood family. There was the phrase that reduced my children to outsiders in their own family tree. I see, I said, though I was only just beginning to grasp the full architecture of their exclusion. And you think it's appropriate to teach my children that they're not real family? That they don't deserve the same experiences as their cousins? We're not saying they're not real family, Addison protested, finally looking at me directly. We're just being realistic about social dynamics. Your kids need to understand that Peyton's children will always have certain privileges because they carry our bloodline. It's natural. It's biological. Natural. She was using scientific terms to justify cruelty, as if genetics were a reasonable excuse for treating children differently. So, at the pool party, I said slowly, when Harper and Liam are swimming and playing with their cousins and friends, where exactly do you expect my children to be? Nobody answered. At the family reunion, when everyone's taking photos and sharing stories about family history, do Mia and Evan just stand in the corner? Do they wait outside? You're being deliberately obtuse, Peyton snapped, irritation creeping into her voice. Nobody said they'd be excluded from everything. We're just saying that some events are more appropriate for our side of the family, the biological side. I looked around that dining room, truly seeing it for the first time. The portraits on the walls were all of Peyton's children. Birthday photos, school pictures, candid shots of Harper and Liam at various ages. There wasn't a single photograph of Mia or Evan displayed anywhere in that house. Not one. Let me ask you something else, I said, rising from the bar stool. When's the last time any of you came to Evan's baseball games? He plays every Saturday morning, has for the past 2 seasons. Silence. When's the last time you asked Mia about school, about her friends, about the science fair she spent 6 weeks preparing for? Roger shifted uncomfortably in his recliner. We ask about school. When? When's the last time you called? Just to talk to them, not to ask me for money. The question landed like a physical blow. I could see it in their faces, the dawning realization that I'd connected the dots they thought I was too blind to see. That's not fair, Addison said weakly. Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your relationship with my children has always been secondary to your relationship with my bank account. You remember to call when Roger needed a new truck. You remember to call when Peyton needed a lawyer. You remember to call when the roof needed repairs. But you've never once remembered to call on Mia's birthday. Not once in 9 years. We send cards, Peyton protested. You send cards that I know for a fact your mother buys in bulk at the grocery store, because I found a receipt on the counter last Christmas. Generic birthday cards with $20 tucked inside. The same cards you sent to your hairdresser and your mail carrier. Mia had stopped eating. Both my children stare at their plates now, absorbing this conversation about their worth, learning in real time how little they meant to the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally. Come on, kids, I said quietly. Get your things. We're leaving. Leah, please. Addison took a step toward me. Let's not do this in front of the children. You should have thought about that before you did it in front of the children, I said, before you made them watch their cousins eat while they went hungry. Before you taught them that they're not worth the same effort, the same love, the same basic decency as Harper and Liam. I helped Mia and Evan gather their backpacks and water bottles, moving mechanically, my mind racing ahead to what had to come next. At the door, I turned back one last time. We'll talk again soon, when you're ready to be honest about whether you actually love my children or just my money. The flash of panic across Addison's face told me everything. For the first time in 6 years, She was realizing her cash flow might be in jeopardy, that the ATM she'd relied on might finally be closing for business. I walked my children to the car in silence, buckled them into their seats, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. In the rearview mirror, both kids stared out their windows, their faces carefully blank in that way children learn when they're trying not to cry. And that's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I turned the key in the ignition, but didn't put the car in drive. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. The silence in the car felt heavy, oppressive, like a physical weight pressing down on all three of us. I should have said something comforting, something to make it better. But my throat had closed up, and I couldn't find words that wouldn't be lies. Finally, I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. The house sat there in my rearview mirror, warm light glowing from the windows, looking exactly like the kind of home where families gathered and children were loved. The illusion was perfect from the outside. We made it 3 blocks before Mia spoke. "Mom." Her voice was so small, I almost didn't hear it over the engine. "Why don't Grammy and Pop like us, as much as Harper and Liam?" The question landed in my chest like a stone dropping into still water, sending ripples of pain through everything I thought I understood. I opened my mouth to give her the answer a mother is supposed to give, the comforting lie about how of course they love you equally, how you're imagining things, how family is complicated but love is simple. But I couldn't. I couldn't lie to her anymore. "They should love you exactly the same, baby," I said instead, my voice shaking. "Grandparents are supposed to love all their grandchildren equally. But they don't." Evan interjected, flat and factual in a way only a 7-year-old can be. "We're not blood family," Aunt Peyton said. I had to pull over. I couldn't see the road anymore through the tears that had started without my permission. I guided the car to the curb in front of a darkened park and put it in park, pressing my palms against my eyes as if I could physically hold back the crying. My 7-year-old son had just articulated his own perceived worthlessness, and he'd done it in the same tone he might use to comment on the weather, like it was just a fact of life he'd accepted, like he'd already learned his place in this world. "Listen to me," I said, turning around in my seat to face them directly. "What Aunt Peyton said is cruel and wrong. You are family. You're their grandchildren. And if they can't see how special and valuable and wonderful you are, that's their failure, not yours. Do you understand me?" Mia nodded, but her eyes were full of doubt. Evan just stared at his hands. "How long has this been happening?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "How long have they been treating you differently when I'm not there?" The kids exchanged a glance, that silent sibling communication that happens without words. "Always, I think," Mia finally said, "but we thought maybe we were being too sensitive. Like maybe we were imagining it." "Always." The word echoed in my head as I turned back around, staring at the dark park through the windshield. Always meant this wasn't new. Always meant every time I dropped them off for babysitting, every Sunday dinner, every holiday gathering, this had been happening, and I'd been too blind to see it. Or perhaps too afraid to see it, because seeing it would have meant choosing between my children and the family I'd worked so hard to belong to. My mind raced backward through 6 years of memories, re-examining them through this new, painful lens. Mia's 6th birthday party, where Addison and Roger had brought Harper and Liam elaborate presents, remote control cars, American Girl dolls, while Mia received a $20 Target gift card. I'd rationalized it. They were on a budget. Handmade gifts were more meaningful. Mia didn't need material things to feel loved. Christmas 2 years ago, Addison's living room covered in framed photos of Harper and Liam at every age, professional portraits, candid shots, an entire wall dedicated to Peyton's children. When I'd asked where the photos of Mia and Evan were, Addison had said she was waiting to get good ones printed, that the lighting in the ones I'd sent wasn't quite right. I believed her. I'd actually believed her. The beach house vacation we weren't invited to do to limited space. Roger explained they could only fit one family comfortably, and since Peyton was recently divorced and struggling, she needed it more. But the beach house had 4 bedrooms. I'd seen photos. There had been plenty of space. They just hadn't wanted us there. Every small cruelty had been there all along, brick by brick building a foundation of exclusion. I've been too busy writing checks to notice the structure they were constructing around my children. I pulled back onto the road, continuing home, my mind still cataloging incidents I'd dismissed as misunderstandings. The Christmas pageant where Addison and Roger sat in the front row, cheering for Harper, but claimed they'd gotten the time wrong for Evan's performance. The science fair where they'd promised to see Mia's project, but never showed up due to a last-minute conflict they couldn't avoid. The baseball games, the school concerts, the awards ceremonies, all the moments where my children had scanned the audience, looking for their grandparents, and found empty seats instead. When we pulled into our driveway, I could see Wyatt moving around in the kitchen through the window. Normal Tuesday evening, making dinner, probably assuming we'd all walk in with stories about our day, and everything would be fine. Everything was not fine. The kids went straight upstairs without being asked, and I knew they wanted space to process what had happened without adult eyes on them. I stood in the entryway for a moment, trying to compose myself before facing my husband, but my face must have betrayed me instantly. What happened? Wyatt asked when I walked into the kitchen. His tone was already defensive, already bracing for criticism of his family. I told him everything. Every word his mother had said, every cruelty his sister had inflicted, every moment of our children sitting with empty plates while their cousins feasted. I watched his face cycle through shock, then discomfort, then settle into something that looked like resignation. And that expression told me he'd known. Maybe not the specific incidents, but the overall pattern. He'd known and chosen not to see it. They probably didn't mean it the way it sounded, he said, and the words felt like a betrayal. You know how Mom is. She says things without thinking them through. She told our children they should wait for scraps, Wyatt. She said it was normal for blood family to eat first. Your sister told them they need to know their place. What part of that could I possibly be misunderstanding? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from every difficult conversation we'd ever had. I'm sure there's context you're missing. Family dynamics are complicated. Stop, I said, my voice sharp enough that he actually took a step back. Stop defending them. Stop making excuses. Your family humiliated our children today. And instead of being angry about it, you're telling me I'm overreacting. I'm not saying you're overreacting. I'm saying maybe we should talk to them before jumping to conclusions. I heard what they said, Wyatt. I saw what they did. There are no conclusions to jump to. This happened. He was quiet for a moment, and I could see him struggling, an internal battle between the son raised to never question his mother and the father supposed to protect his children. They've always been good to us, he finally said, and the weakness in that argument made me want to scream. Have they? When Mia was in the hospital with pneumonia, where was your mother? When I had a miscarriage and could barely get out of bed, did your sister bring over a single meal? When we begged them to babysit so we could save our marriage with a weekend away, did any of them make time? That's different. How? How was it different? They had commitments. They have lives. They can't drop everything just because we need help. But we could drop everything when they need money, I said quietly. We can drop everything when your mother needs a new roof, where your father needs a new truck, where your sister needs a lawyer. Funny how that works. I walked past him to the home office and opened my laptop, pulling up our bank account with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Wyatt followed me, hovering in the doorway. What are you doing? Something I should have done years ago, I said. I'm calculating exactly how much money we've given your family. Leah, that's not necessary. It's absolutely necessary. I need to know. I need to see the number. I need to understand what I've been funding all this time while they've been systematically excluding our children from their own family. The spreadsheets began to form. Each transaction a small wound that added up to something catastrophic. 3,000 here, 5,000 there. 15,000 for the roof, 12,000 for legal fees, 8,000 for medical. Bills. The numbers climbed higher and higher while Wyatt stood in the doorway, watching me work, his face growing paler with each entry. When I finally reached the total, I stared at it for a long moment, not quite believing what I was seeing. $134,000. Over 6 years, I had given Wyatt's family $134,000. And in return, They taught my children they weren't worth feeding. $134,000, I said out loud, my voice hollow in the quiet office. The numbers sat on my screen in bold, digital certainty, impossible to deny or minimize. Wyatt made it sound like he'd been punched. That can't be right. It's right. I've checked it 3 times. I scrolled back to the top of the spreadsheet, showing him the earliest entries from 6 years ago. This is every bank transfer, every check, every direct payment I've made to your family or on their behalf. Want me to walk you through it? He didn't answer, just stared at the screen like the numbers might rearrange themselves into something less damning. $3,000 for property taxes before we were even married. I continued, my voice taking on a mechanical quality as I recited the list. $5,000 for your dad's medical procedure 3 months after the wedding. $12,000 for Peyton's custody lawyer. $15,000 for the roof. $8,000 for your mom's dental work. $22,000 for your dad's truck because the old one finally died. I didn't realize, Wyatt said weakly. I didn't know it added up to that much. That's the problem, Wyatt. You never asked. You never questioned why every single family emergency became my financial responsibility. You never wondered why your parents, with their paid-off house, and your sister, with her boutique job, couldn't handle their own expenses without my constant support. I kept scrolling through the entries, watching his face grow paler with each line item. Emergency dental work that insurance supposedly didn't cover. Property tax increases that happened with suspicious regularity. Car repairs that always seemed to coincide with my quarterly bonuses. Medical bills, home repairs, legal fees, utility assistance during tight months that never seemed to end. Some of these were loans, Wyatt said, grasping at the weakest defense available. They were going to pay us back. Were they? Show me one. Show me a single loan that's been repaid. Silence. The roof repair was supposed to be temporary help. He tried again. Dad was going to pay us back when his settlement came through. What settlement, Wyatt? There was no settlement. There was never going to be a settlement. That was just another story to make me feel better about writing the check. He sank into the chair across from my desk, his head in his hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, seeing him confront the reality of what his family had been doing. But then I remembered Mia and Evan sitting on those bar stools with empty plates, and the sympathy evaporated. They're my parents, he said finally, his voice muffled by his hands. They raised me. They sacrificed for me. I can't just abandon them. I'm not asking you to abandon them. I'm asking you to see what they've been doing to our children, to us. They've been using you, Wyatt. Using your guilt and your sense of obligation to bleed us dry while treating our kids like they're less than human. That's not fair. Your mother told our children they should wait for scraps. I cut him off, my voice rising. Your sister told them they need to know their place. Your father agreed that they should learn young to expect less than their cousins. While we've been paying for their mortgages and their trucks and their lawyers, they've been teaching our babies that they don't deserve basic dignity. How is pointing that out not fair? I heard footsteps on the stairs and immediately lowered my voice. The last thing I needed was for Mia or Evan to hear us fighting about them. A moment later, there was a soft knock on the office door. Mom, Mia's voice, small and uncertain. Can I get some water? Of course, baby. I'll come with you. I left Wyatt sitting in the office, staring at the spreadsheet, and went upstairs with Mia. She filled her water bottle at the kitchen sink, taking longer than necessary. And I realized she'd come down because she'd heard us arguing and wanted to make sure I was okay. 9 years old and already trying to take care of me. Are you and Dad fighting about what happened at Grammy's? She asked, not looking at me. I could have lied. Should have lied, probably. But I was so tired of lying to protect other people's feelings. We're having a difficult conversation about it. Yes. Is it our fault? The question shattered what was left of my composure. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tight against my chest. No, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Not one single bit. You and Evan have done nothing wrong. The adults in the situation have made bad choices, and we're trying to figure out how to fix it. Does Dad think we're overreacting too? As if she'd already internalized that her feelings about being excluded and humiliated weren't valid. As if she'd learned to doubt her own perception of cruelty. Dad is learning some things he should have paid attention to a long time ago, I said carefully. It's hard for him because it's his family, and nobody wants to believe their family would do something hurtful on purpose. She nodded against my shoulder, and I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. After I got her settled back in bed, I stood in the hallway for a long moment, just breathing, trying to find the strength to go back downstairs and finish the conversation I'd started. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Rachel, my best friend since college. Asterisk, how did it go? Call me if you need to talk. Asterisk, I texted her on the drive home, a brief message explaining what had happened. Now I realized I desperately needed to hear a voice that wasn't Wyatt's. Someone who would understand without defending, who would validate what I was feeling instead of telling me I was overreacting. I went into the bedroom and closed the door before calling her. Tell me everything, Rachel said immediately. No preamble, no small talk. So I did. I told her about the empty plates and the full dining table, about Addison's casual cruelty and Peyton's deliberate meanness, about Roger nodding along like this was all perfectly reasonable. I told her about Wyatt's defensive reaction and the spreadsheet showing $134,000 in support for people who couldn't be bothered to love my children. Rachel listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I love most about her. She didn't try to fix it or minimize it or offer platitudes. She just listened until I ran out of words. I'm not surprised, she finally said, and there was sadness in her voice. Leah, I've been watching this pattern for years. I've tried to point it out gently, but you weren't ready to hear it. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I understand why you couldn't see it. You wanted family so badly after losing your parents. Wyatt's family seemed like everything you've been missing, but they've been using that longing against you, using your generosity as a weapon. What do? I asked, my voice breaking. How do I fix this? What do you want to do? I thought about it for a moment, truly considered what outcome I was looking for. Did I want an apology? Did I want them to change? Did I want to salvage the relationship somehow? No. What I wanted was for them to understand what they'd lost, what they'd thrown away by treating my children as disposable. I want them to hurt the way they hurt my kids, I said quietly. Is that terrible? It's human, Rachel said. And honestly, it might be necessary. Some people don't learn until they face real consequences. I don't even know where to start. Actually, Rachel said, and I could hear the shift in her tone from friend to paralegal. You might have more options than you think. Didn't you co-sign on their mortgage? Yeah. 3 years ago, when they were refinancing, their credit was shot from some previous foreclosure. And you've been making payments, substantial ones. The property taxes alone are brutal. What about Roger's truck? You mentioned a loan. I guaranteed it with my credit score. They couldn't get approved on their own. Rachel was quiet for a moment, and I could practically hear her legal mind working through possibilities. Leah, do you understand what this means? You're not just giving them money. You're actually legally responsible for their debts, which means you also have the power to remove yourself from those obligations. My heart started beating faster. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you wanted to send a message, a very clear and very powerful message about what happens when you take someone for granted, you have the legal right to stop all support immediately. You can remove yourself as a co-signer on that mortgage. You can withdraw your guarantee on the truck loan. You can stop making any payments you've been making on their behalf. What would happen to them? They'd have to cover those expenses themselves. And given what you've told me about their financial situation, they probably can't. They'd face foreclosure on the house. The truck would get repossessed. They'd have to drastically downsize their lifestyle. I sat with that information, turning it over in my mind. The power I'd had all along without realizing it. The leverage I'd been giving them freely while they used it to hurt my children. How fast could this happen? I asked. If you make the calls tomorrow, the banks would notify them within 48 hours. Foreclosure proceedings take about 90 days, but the panic would start immediately. I thought about 18 minutes. 18 minutes. My children had sat with empty plates, watching their cousins eat. 18 minutes of humiliation and hunger and learning they didn't matter. I need to think about this, I said. Of course, but Leah, whatever you decide, I'm here. If you need legal paperwork, if you need someone to make calls with you, If you just need someone to remind you that you're not crazy for being angry, I'm here. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. Downstairs, I could hear Wyatt moving around, probably still in the office, looking at that spreadsheet. The house was quiet except for the normal settling sounds. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. I pulled up my banking app on my phone and started looking at the recurring payments more carefully. The mortgage assistance that went out on the 1st of every month, the truck payment on the 15th, the mysterious monthly transfer to an account I'd set up years ago that I now realized was paying part of Peyton's rent. They built their entire comfortable lifestyle on the foundation of my income. Their nice house, their reliable vehicles, their ability to take beach vacations and host elaborate dinners. All of it funded by the daughter-in-law they'd never bothered to value. I stayed up most of that night researching cosign loans, guarantor obligations, mortgage law. By 3 o'clock in the morning, I understood exactly what I could do and what the consequences would be. By 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd made my decision. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Wyatt's breathing beside me, running through scenarios and consequences in my mind. By the time dawn broke through our bedroom curtains, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Wyatt left early for summer school classes, kissing my forehead without meeting my eyes. We hadn't resolved anything from the night before. The spreadsheet still sat open on my laptop downstairs. $134,000 in damning evidence neither of us could ignore. I got the kids ready for camp with mechanical efficiency, packing lunches and sunscreen while they moved around me with unusual quietness. They knew something was wrong, could feel the tension radiating off me like heat from pavement. "Mom," Mia asked as I buckled her seatbelt, "are we ever going to see Grammy and Pop again?" The question lodged in my throat like a physical object. I had to take a breath before I could answer. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. We need some time to figure things out. Did we do something wrong?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and I had to grip the car door to keep myself steady. "No, you did nothing wrong. Nothing. Do you hear me?" She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Children always blame themselves. It's hardwired into them somehow. This belief that adult cruelty must be their fault. I made it 3 blocks from our house before I had to pull over. The tears came so suddenly, I couldn't see the road anymore. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to breathe through the sobs while my children sat silently in the back seat, probably terrified by seeing their mother fall apart. "I'm sorry," I managed to say. "I'm so sorry you had to experience what happened yesterday. You deserve better. You deserved so much better than how they treated you." "It's okay, Mom," Evan said quietly from the back seat. "We're used to it. Used to it. My 7-year-old son was used to being treated as less than human by his own family. How had I let this happen? How had I been so blind? Are we going to be okay?" Evan asked, and something in his tone made me look at him in the rearview mirror. Without Graham's help, I mean. Are we going to be okay? The question revealed how much he'd absorbed about our family dynamics. He'd been paying attention to things I thought children didn't notice. The constant requests for money, the way we rearranged our lives around his grandparents' needs. The unspoken understanding that Grammy and Pop required our support to survive. "We're going to be more than okay," I told him, wiping my eyes and pulling back onto the road. "I promise you that." After I dropped them at camp, I sat in the parking lot with my phone in my hand. My accountant's number was already pulled up. All I had to do was press call. But once I started this, there was no going back. Once I dismantled their financial security, we would be at war. I pressed call. My accountant, Margaret, answered on the second ring. I'd prepared her yesterday with a brief overview of what I needed, so she was ready. "I want to move forward," I said, "with everything we discussed." "You're sure about this, Leah? Once we start the process, it's going to move quickly." "I'm sure." "All right, let me pull up your file." I heard typing on her end. "The mortgage first. You're listed as co-signer on the property at 847 Maple Grove Drive." "Correct. Correct. I'll contact the bank this morning and initiate removal of you as co-signer. They'll need to refinance without your income and credit, which, given what you've told me about their financial situation, they likely can't do. They'll have 90 days to either refinance, find another co-signer, or pay off the mortgage in full. If they can't do any of those things, the foreclosure process begins. How quickly will they be notified? The bank will contact them within 24 to 48 hours. Next, I call my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, whom Rachel had connected me with. She'd already reviewed the documentation I'd sent regarding the truck loan and Peyton's rental situation. The truck loan is straightforward, Patricia explained. You guaranteed it with your credit, but you can withdraw that guarantee with written notice. The dealership will contact the primary borrower, Roger, and require him to refinance without your backing within 30 days, or they'll repossess the vehicle. And Peyton's rent? That's even simpler. You've been making supplemental payments directly to her landlord. You can stop those immediately. No legal process required. Just stop paying. Will the landlord notify her when her next rent payment is short? Absolutely. Probably within a week. I sat in my car after those calls were made, watching other parents drop their children off at camp. Normal people living normal lives, not calculating revenge against family members who treated their children like garbage. But I wasn't going to feel guilty. Not this time. I drove home and spent the day working from my home office, responding to emails, and sitting through video conferences while my mind was somewhere else entirely. I kept checking the time, obsessively watching the minutes tick by. I had decided something during my sleepless night. I was going to time this perfectly. 18 minutes. That's how long Mia and Evan had sat with empty plates, watching their cousins eat. 18 minutes of hunger and humiliation and learning they didn't matter. At 7:02 that evening, I made the first call. The mortgage bank had already processed my paperwork. All I had to do was verbally confirm my intention to remove myself as co-signer, and it became official. The representative on the phone was professional and impersonal as she explained that the primary borrowers would be notified by mail and phone within 24 hours. Second call, the truck dealership. Same process, same efficiency. Roger would receive notification that he needed to refinance the loan without my guarantee within 30 days. Third call, Peyton's landlord, a man named Frank, whom I've been sending checks to for over 2 years. I'm calling to inform you that I'll no longer be making supplemental rent payments for Unit 3B. This is effective immediately. The tenant is going to be short on rent then, Frank said, sounding annoyed. She can't afford the full amount on her own. That's between you and her. My obligation ends today. I hung up and looked at the clock. 7:27 p.m. 3 phone calls in 2 minutes. Everything was done. Now I waited. Wyatt came home around 7:30, still walking on eggshells around me. He heated up leftovers and ate in silence while I sat at the kitchen table, my phone face down in front of me. Did you do something? He asked quietly. I protected our children. Leah, what did you do? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Addison. I checked the time. 7:43 p.m. Exactly 18 minutes after I made my calls, I answered on speaker so Wyatt could hear. Leah. Honey, something's wrong with the mortgage payment. Her voice was trembling, verging on panic. The bank called and said you removed yourself as co-signer. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Addison. I removed myself from your mortgage and stopped all payments. You can't do that. We'll lose the house. Then I suggest you figure out how to make the payments yourselves. You have 90 days before foreclosure proceedings begin. Leah, please. We can work this out. Can we? Because yesterday you told my children they should wait for scraps while your daughter's children ate first. You told them to know their place. So now you're going to learn yours. I ended the call. Wyatt stared at me, his face pale. What did you just do? I took away everything I've been giving them. The mortgage, the truck loan, Peyton's rent. All of it stops today. They're going to lose everything. Good. My phone rang again. Roger. This time I let it go to voicemail and moments later heard his angry voice leaving a message about how I was destroying the family, how I had no right, how he was going to make me fix this. 12 minutes after the first call, my phone rang a third time. Peyton, sobbing before I even said hello. You told Frank to stop paying my rent. Leah, I can't afford my apartment without that help. I'm going to get evicted. Then I suggest you ask your mother for help, I said calmly. Oh, wait. She's about to lose her house because I stopped subsidizing her lifestyle, too. You vindictive. Be very careful what you say next, Peyton, because I've also notified your custody lawyer that I won't be covering any more of your legal fees. I believe you still owe them about $8,000. I'm sure they'll be very interested in immediate payment. The line went dead. 17 minutes after the first call. I looked at Wyatt, who was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. I timed it, I said. 18 minutes. The exact amount of time our children sat with empty plates, watching their cousins eat. Every phone call, every moment of panic they're experiencing right now, it matches what they did to Mia and Evan. Minute by minute. Leah, they're going to lose everything they have. Yes, I said. They are. Wyatt's phone started ringing at 6 o'clock the next morning. His mother. He looked at the screen, looked at me, and declined the call. It rang again 30 seconds later. And again, and again. By the time we sat down for breakfast, he had 14 missed calls from various members of his family. I had 9. The barrage had begun. The first voicemail from Addison started with tears. Asterisk Leah, honey, please call me back. There's been a terrible misunderstanding with the bank. They're saying we're going to lose the house. Please, we need to fix this. Call me. Asterisk the second voicemail, left an hour later, had a different tone. Asterisk, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't funny. You can't just destroy our lives because you're upset about a little disagreement. We're family. Call me back right now. Asterisk the third voicemail was pure rage. Asterisk, how dare you do this to us after everything we've done for you? We welcomed you into this family with open arms. We treated you like a daughter, and this is how you repay us? By taking away our home? You're a spiteful, vindictive woman, and Wyatt deserves better. Asterisk, I listened to each one with Wyatt sitting across the table, watching my face for a reaction. I kept my expression neutral, clinical, like I was reviewing data from a work project. She's spiraling, I said calmly. Leah, maybe we should what? Give them another chance to tell our children they're not good enough? Write another check so they can continue treating us like an ATM with a pulse. He didn't have an answer for that. By mid-morning, Roger had sent 6 text messages, each one escalating in aggression. The last one threatened legal action, claiming I'd entered into a binding agreement to support them and couldn't just walk away without consequences. That's when I forwarded the entire thread to Patricia, my lawyer. She called me back within 20 minutes. Your father-in-law is bluffing, she said. There's no binding agreement. Every payment you made was voluntary. I'm sending him a cease. And desist letter right now, explaining that any further harassment will result in a restraining order. Thank you, Leah. Be prepared. This is going to get worse before it gets better. People who've been financially dependent on someone else don't give up easily. They're going to try everything to get you to resume payments. She was right. On day 2, Peyton showed up at my office building. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked on the conference room door, her face apologetic and uncomfortable. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman in the lobby demanding to see you. Security is dealing with it, but she's claiming it's a family emergency. I excused myself from the meeting and took the elevator down to the lobby, already knowing who I'd find there. Peyton stood near the security desk, her face blotchy from crying, her voice loud enough to draw attention from everyone passing through. You can't do this to me, she was saying to the security guard, who looked deeply uncomfortable. My children are going to be homeless because of her. Ma'am, you need to leave the building, the guard said firmly. Not until she talks to me. I approached slowly, keeping my distance. Peyton, she whirled around, and I saw a genuine panic in her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Leah, please. Frank is going to evict me. I can't afford the full rent on my own. Harper and Liam need stability. You can't do this to my children. You did this to your children when you decided mine weren't worth basic decency. That's not what happened. You told my kids they should know their place. I said quietly, aware of the audience we'd attracted. You said your children come first. Well, now my children come first. You'll figure it out, Peyton. The same way millions of single mothers figured out without someone else paying their bills. I'll lose custody. Don't you understand? If I can't provide stable housing, Jeremy's lawyer will use it against me. You're going to help him take my children. That hit differently than I expected. For a split second, I wavered, thinking about Harper and Liam and how none of this was their fault. But then I remembered Mia and Evan sitting on those bar stools with empty plates, and the sympathy evaporated. Then maybe you should have thought about consequences before you treated my children like they were disposable. Security escorted her out while she screamed about how I was destroying her life. I went back upstairs, sat through the rest of my meeting, and didn't let myself think about what had just happened until I got home that evening. What I didn't expect was the call from Wyatt's aunt, Linda. I'd met Linda exactly 3 times, all at major family events. She lived in Oregon and wasn't particularly close with Addison or Roger, but she was Roger's sister and apparently had been more involved in their lives than I'd realized. Leah, this is Linda Harper. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I need to understand what's happening with Roger and Addison. What did they tell you? I asked carefully. Addison called me yesterday, asking for money. She said you'd cut them off financially, and they were about to lose everything. She said you'd always been controlling with money, that you held it over their heads, and now you were punishing them over some minor disagreement about the grandkids. The lies were so breathtaking, I actually laughed. Is that what she said? She made it sound like you'd been financially abusive for years. Said she'd been reaching out to family because she didn't know how else to survive. She's been telling me this for about 3 years now. Actually, I've been sending them $1,500 a month because I thought they were being mistreated. 3 years. Addison had been running a side operation with extended family, telling them I was the villain while I was actively funding her entire lifestyle. Linda, would you be willing to listen to my side of this? That's why I'm calling. I sent her everything. The spreadsheet showing $134,000 in payments. Bank statements proving I'd been making their mortgage payments. The timeline showing how every request coincided with my bonuses. And then I sent her the recording I'd made on my phone at dinner, where you could clearly hear Addison talking about my children waiting for scraps. Linda called me back an hour later, and I could hear the anger in her voice. I've been sending them $1,500 a month for 3 years based on complete lies. She told me you were withholding money while living extravagantly. She made you sound like a monster. I'm sorry she put you in that position. Don't apologize. I'm furious with her, not you. I just called Roger and told him exactly what I think of him and his wife. I won't be sending another dollar. Over the next few days, I got similar calls from Wyatt's uncle Marcus, 2 cousins I'd barely met, and even Addison's own sister, who'd apparently been contributing to what she thought was a desperate situation. Each one had been told some version of the same story. I was wealthy and controlling, refusing to help while Wyatt's parents struggled. The web of lies was more extensive than I'd imagined, and watching it unravel gave me a cold satisfaction I wasn't entirely proud of, but couldn't deny. Wyatt was caught in the middle of all of it. His phone never stopped ringing. His mother called, sobbing about losing the house. His father left voicemails calling me names I won't repeat. His sister sent him essays via text about how I was vindictive and cruel, how I was deliberately destroying her life and her children's stability. I watched him struggle with it, torn between the loyalty he'd been raised to feel and the growing realization that I'd been right about his family all along. One night, about a week after I made those phone calls, he was in the bedroom talking to his mother. I could hear it from the hallway, where I'd paused on my way to check on the kids. His voice was strained, exhausted. Mom, I can't keep having this conversation. No, I'm not going to make her change her mind because you told her children they should wait for scraps. You told them they needed to know their place. There was a long pause where I could hear Addison's voice through the phone, high-pitched and defensive. I don't care if that's not how you meant it, Wyatt continued, and I heard something crack in his voice. That's what you said. That's what Mia and Evan heard. Do you have any idea what that did to them? I backed away from the door, not wanting to eavesdrop anymore, but I'd heard enough. Something was shifting in him, finally. We came downstairs 20 minutes later. His eyes were red. I told her I need space, he said. I can't be in the middle of this anymore. I can't keep defending them when I know what they did was wrong. It was the first time since this started that he'd acknowledged their behavior without qualifying it. without making excuses. That must have been hard, I said. It was, but you know what was harder? Mia asked me earlier if Grammy was mad because we stopped giving her money. My heart dropped. She what? She heard me on the phone. She connected all the dots. Leah, she understands that Grammy and Pop's love was conditional on our financial support. What 9-year-old should have to understand that? He sat down heavily at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I've been so stupid. You tried to tell me for years that something was off, and I kept defending them. I kept telling you that you were misunderstanding. Losing my parents had made me vulnerable to Addison's manipulation. How my desperate need for family connection had blinded me to warning signs I would have caught otherwise. She didn't let me off the hook for ignoring my instincts, but she helped me understand why I'd done it. The counseling wasn't magic. We still fought. There were nights I slept in the guest room because I couldn't stand to be near him. But slowly, incrementally, we were building something stronger than what we'd had before. Wyatt started setting boundaries with his family in ways he never had. When his mother tried to call and complain about their apartment, he told her he couldn't listen to that conversation and ended the call. When Peyton sent him long texts blaming me for her problems, he responded with a single sentence. You're responsible for your own choices. When Roger tried to gild him about abandoning family, Wyatt finally told him that family works both ways, and he was done being the only one expected to sacrifice. It was remarkable watching him find his spine after 34 years of conditioning. Painful, but remarkable. The biggest changes, though, came in our children. Mia stopped apologizing for everything. I hadn't even realized how often she apologized until she stopped doing it. Sorry for asking for seconds at dinner. Sorry for needing help with homework. Sorry for existing in spaces she had every right to occupy. All of it gradually faded away as she realized she didn't have to earn her place in her own family. Evan started talking about his feelings instead of swallowing them. When something upset him, he said so. When he was angry or hurt or confused, he told us, instead of going quiet and small. He started taking up space again, started being loud and messy, and exactly as present as a 7-year-old boy should be. They stopped asking about Grammy and Pop around month 3. Just stopped mentioning them entirely, like they'd collectively decided that chapter was closed. When I eventually showed them Addison's letter in month 5, asking if they'd want to see their grandparents again someday, Mia thought about it for a long time. Maybe when I'm older, she finally said. Right now, I don't think I'm ready. Is that okay? That's more than okay, baby. You get to decide when and if you're ready. Nobody else. What about you, Evan? Wyatt asked. Evan shrugged. I don't know. I don't really miss them. Is that bad? Not even a little bit, I assured him. 6 months after everything fell apart, we had dinner together as a family. Just the 4 of us. No extended family obligations. No performances for people who didn't really value us. Just us existing together in our own space. Wyatt made pasta. The kids set the table. I lit candles, even though it wasn't a special occasion, just because it felt right. We ate and talked and laughed. And somewhere in the middle of Evan telling a ridiculous story about something that happened at camp, I looked around our table and realized this was what family was supposed to feel like. Safe, equal, unconditional. I'd spent 6 years trying to buy my way into belonging with people who would never really let me in. I'd funded a comfortable lifestyle for people who treated my children as disposable. I'd written checks and ignored red flags and convinced myself that love just looked different in different families. But I've been wrong. Love doesn't look like empty plates and casual cruelty and being told to know your place. Love doesn't come with conditions and hierarchies and payment plans. Real love looks like this. Like pasta dinner on a Tuesday night with sauce on the tablecloth and kids talking over each other and nobody keeping score of who deserves what. I'd burned down the toxic structure I'd been supporting for years. And from the ashes, we were building something real. The screams that had filled Addison's house the night I made those phone calls had been the sound of consequences arriving after years of being held at bay. I delivered them with precision and purpose, timing the devastation to match the cruelty my children had experienced. I never regret it, not for a single moment, because my children deserved a mother who would protect them, even when it meant going to war with the family I tried so hard to join. They deserved to learn that they didn't have to accept less than they were worth, that boundaries were healthy, that real love never required them to make themselves smaller. And if teaching them that meant dismantling someone else's comfortable life, then that was a price I'd pay every single time. Asterisk, perhaps you've faced similar challenges or seen others battle for their family's dignity. This story is a testament to the power of setting boundaries, of defining what true family means. And for all who champion truth, fairness, and unconditional love, that journey is worth every step. Asterisk.